Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. If you don't know, that's kind of crazy. If you don't know, you know what I mean? Like if you don't know what's going on, then that's kind of crazy. Like it really is, right? It's really crazy because Harriet Tubman, she made some 13 missions to rescue approximately 70 enslaved people, including her family and friends, using a network of anti slavery activists and safe houses known collectively as the Underground Railroad. Of course, every you should know who she is because what was it back when I forgot when that she was going to be put on not the dollar who the hell was there they were going to put her on something, right? You should know about Harriet Tubman and how she freed the slaves, especially if you're black. You watch Boondocks, so you know like how they kind of like told the story of her. But like Harriet Tubman freed the slaves and everything. It's not really much I can go. It's not really much that I could go into. She served as an armed scout and spy for the Union Army. In her later years, Tubman was an activist in the movement for women's suffrage. I love women's suffrage. You gotta love it. You gotta love it. It sounds like something you shouldn't love, but you gotta love it. Harriet Tubman was a fighter. Okay, Harriet Tubman was a fighter. You went on 13 missions to go get enslaved people, and using the Underground Railroad, she was able to free 70 enslaved people. That's crazy, right? That's crazy. But the reason for me the reason for me using Harriet Tubman for episode 12 is because on Spectrum News, what I just seen on my Twitter is that they found a drawer in New York City that would have been connected to the Underground Railroad. So I seen that. I was inspired to talk about Harriet Tubman because uh, majority of people should know about her. Like majority of black people should know about who Martin Luther King is. You should know who Rosa Parks is. These are like the most common ones. When you talk about black history, it's like, oh, so you're talking about Martin Luther King? You talking about Rosa Parks? You talking about Harriet Tubman? These are like really like kind of like the bare minimum. Like everybody knows who Martin Luther King is. If you don't know who the fuck he is, I feel bad for you. But this is like the front page to, like, if you want to learn about Black History Month, you turn the page. Oh, Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks. This is like the bare minimum. But she was a very courageous woman. She was beaten and whipped and enslaved as a child. I mean, she suffered from traumatic head wounds from, it's wow. Wait a minute. She suffered traumatic head wounds from overseer throwing a heavy metal weight intended to hit another slave, but hit her instead and injured. The injury caused dizziness, pain, and spell of hypersomnia. Okay, wow. So which occurred throughout her life after her injury. Tubman began to experience strange visions and lucid dreams. Oh, that's crazy. Imagine being a slave, but not only being a slave, you not even the intended target. That's kind of crazy right there. Like, I'm mad at a certain slave, but I have shit aim. So shout out to that white dude had shit aim. I want to aim at this person, but I hit another person. That's crazy. See, honestly, I didn't know. I didn't know that because what they talk about Harriet Tubman in schools is like, yeah, she did so much and this and that. I mean, school is school. They're only going to teach you so much about Black History Month, and it's probably a white teacher teaching you anyway. So you kind of got to do your own research. See, I didn't know about that she was enslaved as a child and that she had lucid dreams because of the overseer, which is the slave master or one of his henchmen, threw a heavy weight, and hit her in the head. But it was intended for somebody else. That is the most craziest shit I've ever heard. Well, it's not the most craziest shit I've ever heard, but it's just so weird, right? It's just so weird. And I didn't know that she was an activist for women's suffrage. That's something I didn't know either. Now, I knew she was a spy and a scout. I knew that, and I knew that, but I didn't know that she was well, I mean, why wouldn't she be though, to be honest? But I didn't know. That's something I really didn't know about, was that she was an activist. She was an activist in the movement for women's suffrage. I didn't know that because I'm a part of women's suffrage. A little bit less now, but a little bit less now, but yeah. And if you don't know what women's suffrage is, then I urge you to look it up, because I'm not here to. I'm not going to explain it to you. It's like at some point you got to start doing your own. You got to start doing your own research. That's how you become smarter. Somebody constantly telling you all this crap, you're not going to get. You probably won't even take it in. Although majority of this generation be on their damn phone all the time, but with the attention span of a peanut, it's like, what are they really taking in? It's not much. But there is some stuff that I didn't even know. I generally did not know about the head thing, that she had injuries, because you never hear anything about that. But this is Wikipedia, so it's almost like you take it with a grain of salt. You take it with a grain of salt. It's like you can't believe it, but I would have to look up I would have to go to another website and be like, oh, okay, so they were right, or it kind of matches up. But Harriet Tubman, she deserves to be on this list. She deserves to be on this list. And I really don't have a Mount Rushmore of like black inventors, to be honest, but I can guarantee you Dick Gregory is on that Mount Rushmore for me, for sure. Not Harriet Tubman. But there's not really much to talk about because I mean we kind of said everything that like majority of the stuff. Majority of stuff, and I'm not gonna read all this. I'm just giving a hint to who she is, and for you to do your own research, because it is Black History Month. You should want to know about your history. If you don't want to know about your history, then you must not know where you're going. Because if you don't know your history, what's that saying? If you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat it. You got to know this stuff. You got to know this stuff. And no, but she was amazing. And now I'm seeing some stuff about her being ill and stuff. They don't talk about that like in school or anything. They don't talk about that at all. But there's a lot that I didn't know. Like, she was a part of women's suffrage and all that stuff, and necessarily don't really care about her family. Yeah, see right here. So Harriet Tubman became the first African American woman honored on a U.S. postage stamp. She appeared on the second stamp in 1995. Since 2016, there has been plans to add a portrait of Harriet Tubman to the front of the $20 bill. That's exactly what the hell I was saying. But I generally forgot what happened, why they didn't go through with that. But she was gonna. So it was the $20 bill that they were gonna put her on there. And okay, on front of the $20 bill, moving the portrait of President Andrew Jackson, a slave holder, to the back of the bill. In 2024, the United States Mint issued 3 Harriet Tubman coins. Each coin, her at a different stage in her life. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So they actually came out with coins, but they only made 3. So who has these coins? If I'm being honest, like, so where are they? Who has these coins? So they issued three. It said they issued three Harriet Tubman coins. And so the three coins are going to be so they're going to be a look into. So I guess the first coin is going to be her as a girl, then when she was then when she was an adult, then when she is much older, I'm guessing. And I didn't know she actually had coins out. Yeah. Exactly what I thought. Exactly what I thought. Harriet Tubman half bill, Harriet Tubman silver, Harriet Tubman gold. Okay, so basically Harriet Tubman in her later years, Harriet Tubman with outstretched hand. Okay, Harriet Tubman with two boats representing the raid on. Oh, okay. Wait a minute, two boats. Okay, so she was a part of that. Okay. So this is what the coins would have looked like. Okay. Okay. I mean, okay. I mean, but they're coins. I mean, I don't. I generally doubt like who has these coins at this point. Who has these coins at this point? I guess the government still does. I mean, unless they're actually on eBay. Unless they're actually on eBay. Yeah, coin. What we got here? Okay, so I do see the coins. Harriet Tubman. Okay. Okay, so I mean, there's a lot of stuff you're gonna find on eBay, but I didn't know they actually issued some coins out for her. And then the whole thing about the $20 bill. I forgot why whatever happened. It really doesn't matter. I mean, she's on the bill. She's not on the bill. Money is going to be money. Money's money. I mean, you want to take a slave holder off, and then you're just going to put them to the back of the bill. Did you really do anything at that point? There's still plenty of slave owners that have like monuments and all that shit. Which I mean, they did what they had to do. I don't really. It's not really that big of a deal. For me, it's not really that big of a deal. But I got some videos, so we're gonna watch some videos. The first video is going to be from Twitter about the hidden passageway connected to the Underground Railroad that was discovered in the bottom drawer of a dresser in New York City.
Oh, wow.
And underneath these drawers is the path to freedom. Once removed, there's a hatch.
That hole is so small.
And then you can see this rectangular opening cut into the floorboards, which leads to an enclosed space about 2 feet by 2 feet. A ladder then leads down to the ground floor.
You guys knew this was here.
Yes, we knew it, but we didn't really understand what we were looking at.
Now they know. The merchant's house was also a safe house for enslaved Africans who escaped bondage in the South.
This is very emotional.
Okay. I'm sorry. So you didn't know? So what she said, to clarify, is that we didn't know what we were looking at. Like, we knew, but we didn't know what we were looking at. I'm like, but so no research was done on the house, like where it was placed or not, or I'm not familiar with New York City, but it's like, so you just thought that was, this is an escape route or something in a dresser drawer? Whatever. Let's continue.
Because I'm sitting where desperate people yearning to be free once sat with their eyes on freedom. They went down to a 2x2 space. You could barely stand up in it. And they stayed there, waiting for their next move. This was the path to freedom.
I've been practicing historic preservation law for over 30 years. This is a generational find. This is the most significant find in historic preservation in my career, and it's incredibly important that we preserve this.
Architects and preservationists recently went down inside this hidden vertical passageway to examine it for themselves.
I'm not exactly the biggest guy in the world, and I had trouble shimmying down to the bottom, yes.
Wow. And when you got to the bottom, what was there?
Well, there were artifacts down there. There was a newspaper clipping from the 19th century down there.
In 2026, these experts confirmed this passageway was designed in 1832 by the original owner. Joseph Brewster was an abolitionist.
Abolitionism was incredibly rare among white New Yorkers, especially wealthy white New Yorkers. He was the builder of the house. He was able to make these choices and design them.
Brewster sold the building to the Treadwell family in 1835. It's unclear if the Treadwells used or even knew the passageway was there. Historians call this passageway a masterwork of deliberate concealment, designed to be absolutely invisible to slave catchers during the 19th century. Its groundbreaking discovery, a testament to the courage of the abolitionist movement in New York City.
You know, many New Yorkers forget that we were part of the abolitionist movement, we were part of the civil rights movement, but this is a physical evidence here in the Merchant House that really shows New York City's connectivity to what happened in the South, what happened during the Civil War, and what's still happening today.
It's a critical piece of the overall struggle for freedom and justice.
The Merchant's House, no longer just a relic of domestic life in the East Village. Its identity now includes a powerful, emotionally charged monument to the American struggle for liberty. In Manhattan, Cheryl Wills, New York 1.
Yeah, that was tight. That was tight. Just to see that. So yeah, let's get into more.
As one of the most well-known conductors of the Underground Railroad, Harriet Tubman rescued more than 300 slaves over the span of 11 years.
Harriet Tubman was one of the most remarkable women in American history.
Born a slave in the early 1820s, Araminta Ross changed her name to Harriet Tubman after marrying a free black man named John Tubman around 1844.
As a slave, Harriet Tubman was repeatedly whipped. She also later was hit by a lead weight mistakenly, but that lead weight caused her to experience narcolepsy for the rest of her life.
Fearing that she would be sold away from her family in 1849, Tubman fled to Philadelphia using an informal but well-organized network known as the Underground Railroad.
She felt that she would be sold away because she was viewed as a sickly person. She and two of her brothers ran away, and the brothers decided they would return to the plantation. And she, instead of abandoning them, turned around, went back with them to the plantation, and then turned around and escaped a second time by herself.
Using her own money, Tubman made separate journeys to rescue her sister and brother. And in 1851, Tubman guided a group of 11 fugitives north, earning her the nickname Moses.
Harriet Tubman was called the Moses of her people, largely because she was so successful in leading slaves out of slavery, out of the South, into the North, which symbolically is known as the Promised Land. Moses, the figure from the Bible, leading his chosen people, Tubman took on that kind of mythic quality.
In 1858, Tubman assisted abolitionist John Brown in recruiting men for the raid on Harper's Ferry. During the Civil War, Tubman became a Union Army scout, a nurse, and led an armed expedition to liberate more than 700 slaves.
Harriet Tubman was an incredibly brave African-American woman. She sacrificed her own life, and she freed probably over 1,000 people. And she said she could have freed a lot more if they had known they actually were slaves.
Although Tubman was widely well-respected during her lifetime, she was impoverished and died of pneumonia in 1913. Tubman was buried with military honors and was later named an American hero by President Barack Obama.
Harriet Tubman is one of the amazing women in history. She not only brought these slaves out, but she never lost a life.
This video is brought to you by Captivating History. Harriet Ross Tubman was many things in her long life: slave, liberator of slaves, Union Army spy, suffragette, and a public speaker. She used the force of her convictions to save lives and fight against oppression. Harriet was born into slavery in the early 1820s on a plantation in Dorchester County, Maryland. Named Araminta, or Minty, at birth, she was one of 9 children. Her mother, Harriet Ritt Green, was the cook on the plantation owned by Mary Pattison Brodess, while her father, Ben Ross, managed the timber business on a nearby plantation. Ritt tried to keep her family together, but when Mary Brodess's son, Edward, sold the 2 older girls in the family, they were separated forever. Later, when her youngest son was going to be sold to a trader in Georgia, Ritt hid him for a month with the help of other slaves and free blacks in the community. She would threaten violence to anyone who tried to take him. Eventually, Brodess backed down, and the defiant acts of her mother influenced Harriet and her belief in the possibilities of resistance. From a young age, Harriet looked after her younger siblings while her mother worked at the big house. When she was 5 or 6, Mrs. Brodess hired her out as a general cleaner and nursemaid to a local family, the Cooks. Life was hard for Harriet because she was beaten by Mrs. Cook when she was too slow doing chores. Harriet also worked on muskrat traps in the nearby marshes. Once, she became so ill from the swampy work conditions, she was sent home to recover. Fortunately, her mother was a renowned healer and was able to nurse her back to health. Then she was sent to work as a nursemaid for a woman known as Miss Susan, which was another painful experience. Harriet was whipped any time the baby she cared for woke up and cried. On one occasion, she received 5 beatings before breakfast. So she started to wear extra layers of clothing as protection, and she even ran away for a week. In her early teens, Harriet suffered a serious head injury when she was struck by a metal weight thrown by an overseer. He had been aiming at another slave who was making an escape attempt. The blow is believed to have fractured her skull. She was left untreated for several days, and for the rest of her life, she experienced excruciating headaches, seizures, and sudden narcoleptic episodes. The injury also believed to have caused visions and vivid dreams, which she saw as messages from God. Although illiterate, she was taught Bible stories from her mother. She preferred the Old Testament, where enslaved people were freed, rather than the New Testament with its emphasis on obedience. When Harriet's father, Ben, turned 45, he was granted his freedom, as promised by his owner, Andrew Thompson. Some years later, Ben hired a lawyer to investigate his wife's status. Ritt had been made a similar promise by Mrs. Brodess's father, but it had never been honored. However, making a successful legal challenge was almost impossible. In 1844, Harriet married a free black man called John Tubman and legally changed her name from Araminta. John Tubman was older, and the marriage was complicated due to her slave status, and according to law, any children they had would be considered property. In 1849, Edward Brodess attempted to sell Harriet due to her continued ill health. He was unsuccessful. During this, Harriet prayed that Brodess would die. But when this happened a short time later, she said that she regretted her earlier prayers. With Brodess's death, it was even more likely that Harriet and her immediate family members would be sold. She would not wait for that to happen. On September 17, 1849, she tried to escape with her brothers, Henry and Ben. At the time, all 3 had been loaned out to a nearby plantation, so their absence was not immediately noticed. A reward of $100, about $3,100 in modern currency, was offered, but within days, all 3 had returned. Harriet was the most reluctant. Soon after, she escaped for good via the Underground Railroad. This was a network of abolitionists in the United States and Canada who guided escaped slaves to the free states and provinces of the North. It was a diverse group made up of men, women, free blacks, slaves, both white and indigenous supporters, Quakers, Methodists, and Baptists. Like the escapees who had gone before and would go after her, Harriet traveled by night and took shelter in safe houses during the day. She traveled this way to avoid the bounty hunters patrolling the area. She was guided to freedom across the Mason-Dixon line by using the North Star Railway and oral instructions from railroad operators. Once safely in Philadelphia, Harriet joined the local abolitionists, one of which was William Still. Still admitted his life's work to help runaway slaves and kept detailed records in the hopes that they would be reunited with family members. He was instrumental in helping Harriet bring families along the Underground Route. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Law was passed in Congress. It severely punished anyone who aided escapees and compelled law enforcement officials to help in their capture. This law even applied in states which had outlawed slavery. So, the railroad extended itself to southern Ontario to escape the new law's jurisdiction mandate. Canada was part of the British Empire, where slavery had been abolished years earlier. At the end of 1850, Harriet's niece, Mary Ann, and her 2 children were about to be auctioned near Baltimore. Mary Ann's husband, who was a free man, and Harriet concocted a plan that had him making a winning bid at the auction. Then, when the time was right, he and his family would run to a safe house before handing any money over. Harriet then guided them all to Philadelphia. In the spring of 1851, she journeyed to Maryland to rescue more of her family members. That fall, Harriet returned to Dorchester County. She was going to find her husband, John. However, in her absence, he had married another woman and had no desire to leave the state. Rather than wasting the opportunity, she guided others to safety. With the fugitive slave law in place, more escapees were making their way to Canada. In December 1851, Harriet helped at least 11 people cross into southern Ontario. At this time, she may have made the acquaintance of well-known abolitionist Frederick Douglass, and a friendship based on mutual admiration began. For most of the decade before the start of the American Civil War, Harriet used St. Catharines, Ontario, then Canada West, as a base for the Underground Railroad. Over 11 years, Harriet returned often to Maryland. At the end of her career, she had led about 300 people to freedom. She rescued many family members, including her brothers and their families, and her aging parents. Harriet was nicknamed Moses after the Old Testament patriarch who had led his people out of slavery in Egypt to freedom in the Promised Land. Like Moses, Harriet had to craft ways of carrying out her dangerous work. She guided during the fall and winter when the cold weather and long nights tended to keep people in their homes. She made a point of starting the trek with escaped slaves on Saturday evenings. This meant that newspaper notices offering rewards from irate owners would not appear until Monday at the earliest. She used disguises to avoid detection or recognition and carried a gun, not only for protection, but sometimes as an incentive to any person who had second thoughts about completing an escape. Harriet always cited her deep and abiding faith as a source of strength and guidance. She said that her visions guided her as she faced treacherous terrain, search dogs, and bands of roving slave hunters. She boasted that despite there being a reward for the capture of Moses, she never lost a passenger and was never caught. Harriet began to give public talks about slavery and made the acquaintance of well-known abolitionist John Brown. After he was executed for his leading role in the failed raid on Harper's Ferry in Virginia, she declared him a martyr to the cause. When the American Civil War broke out in 1861, Harriet journeyed to Port Royal, South Carolina, offering her services to the Union forces, which had captured a former Confederate stronghold. She made use of her knowledge of herbal medicines to nurse sick soldiers and civilian refugees. She also worked as a cook and laundress. She was an early proponent of creating black Union regiments with freed slaves and had harsh words for President Abraham Lincoln's initial hesitation about emancipation. Harriet formed a network of spies to deliver intelligence to Confederate troops and supply routes soon after emancipation was declared in January of 1863. Later that year, Harriet led an armed expedition during the Civil War, the first woman to do so. She guided the Combahee River Raid in South Carolina, which liberated over 700 slaves and destroyed valuable Confederate supplies. The Civil War ended in 1865. and Harriet settled for good in Auburn, New York. Now widowed, she married a war veteran, Nelson Davis, who, like her, had been enslaved. They adopted a daughter named Gertie. The property in Auburn had been a haven for her family and friends for many years. With emancipation came increased problems of poverty, homelessness, and hunger in the black community. Harriet did her part to help those around her. She had an open-door policy for anyone in need, raising money from the sale of homegrown produce and pigs, and with the donations from friends. The royalties from the sale of a biography by Sarah Bradford also helped offset expenses. Unfortunately, since Harriet had not been designated as an official member of the military, she had never received a salary from the Union Army or a pension like other veterans. It wasn't until Nelson died in 1888 that she finally received money as a war widow. It was the sum of $8 a month, equivalent to about $770 in modern currency. In her late 60s, Harriet began speaking about women's rights and voting. Although black men had gained the right to vote in 1870, women, regardless of race, were still unable to exercise their franchise. She joined other suffragettes, such as Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, on speaking engagements. She was also the keynote speaker at the first meeting of the National Federation of Afro-American Women in 1896. That same year, Harriet made a successful bid on a 25-acre property in Auburn. The African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church helped with the mortgage. Later, she donated a parcel of land to the church for the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged, which opened in 1908. While the country of her birth was slow to recognize her contributions, Harriet's brave exploits had reached the attention of Britain's Queen Victoria. In 1897, she was invited to the monarch's birthday celebrations in England. Financial straits prevented her from making the journey, but the Queen sent a silk shawl and a silver medal. Harriet treasured these gifts for the rest of her life and was buried with the medal. In her later years, she underwent surgery to relieve some of the continuing painful symptoms of the head injury. Due to her health deteriorating, she moved into the rest home she had founded in 1911. She remained there until her death on March 10, 1913. Her last words were, "I go to prepare a place for you." It is believed that she was about 91 years old. Her funeral was described as a grand affair by the newspapers. The mourners included white and black Americans, all joined in their sorrow at her passing and admiration and thankfulness for her life. She was laid to rest with semi-military honors in the Fort Hill Cemetery in Auburn. Harriet's place in American history cannot be denied. She has been the source of movies, operas, novels, paintings, and sculptures over the years. Harriet was, and still is, an icon and inspiration to all those striving for freedom, justice, and equality. An American survey named her as one of the most famous civilians, in company with Revolutionary War figures Betsy Ross and Paul Revere. In 2016, it was announced that she would replace President Andrew Jackson on the United States $20 bill, but that plan has been put on hold. Harriet was modest about her work, as illustrated by this quote, "It wasn't me, it was the Lord. I always told him, I trust you. I do not know where to go or what to do, but I expect you to lead me." And he always did. Her light continues to shine. To discover more about the fascinating life of Harriet Tubman, then check out our book, Harriet Tubman, A Captivating Guide to an American Abolitionist who became the most famous conductor of the Underground Railroad. It's available as an ebook, paperback.
I think that explains everything. So I think that I'm going to call it for a day for Miss Harriet Tubman. If you want to know more about her, then do your own fucking research.